Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Mariano Cicciarelli. Welcome to the second live streaming, Ableton for absolute beginners. I'm just gonna wait for a few seconds to make sure that everything's working, that the live stream is actually getting into YouTube, and that I can hear it, that you've got audio coming through. There it is. Amazing. Cool. So that's actually really cool. This the second live streaming that I'm doing. And it's pretty interesting, the response that I've had several messages and people telling me that this or that tip were interesting, and that there were a few things that at least they could take home from it, which is very, very cool. So thank you so much if you've watched the previous one. Thank you so much if you're watching this one live, or if you're watching it later. What I want to talk about on this live streaming is about how creative you can get with the same set of samples, and what different outcomes you can have by starting with the same set of samples and then applying different techniques of sound processing, and how cool it is actually that you can end up with many different forms, different grooves or different songs at the end of the day. So my aim today is to try and get at least two different versions, two different grooves from the same set of samples. But if we get time and if we can get to it, I'm gonna get to a third version, and also I'm gonna show you what I've done myself for one of my tracks with this same set of samples. Something to note is that this set of samples that I'm gonna be using today is it's available for you to download and play around with it. You'll be able to find the link on the description. The link will take you to this Google Drive folder, which is a folder that I set up. So you just have to download the samples, and then you can use them. It'd be great if you can actually use them, put them into your Ableton, put some of the things that you've learned into practice, and then send them to me. I can even make a video reviewing what you've done, and hopefully giving you tips, or if not, learning from you probably. So let's get right into it. I'm not gonna go into the original version at the moment, mainly because I don't want any of the creative process of this session to be affected by that original version. As I said before, this set of samples is a set of samples that I've used for one of my latest tracks that is not released yet. So I have a final version of what I've done with them, and again, I don't want that final version to affect what I'm gonna do today. I've got a few notes, however, pretty much everything of what I'm gonna do is gonna be on the fly, mainly because I want you to be able to see what's my thought process behind everything I do. If you find that I'm making mistakes, please correct me. If you find anything interesting, please let me know. So the main idea of this is not me only teaching you or giving you tips. Is exchanging ideas, seeing what we all can come up to from different points of view, and knowledge at the end of the day. So good evening, man. Good to see you there. Thank you for the support. So I've organized 4 different groups. The first one is the original version that I'm not gonna play at the moment. Then I've got 3 different ones. Hopefully we'll get to the third one. As I said, all the lines are absolutely empty. The only ones that I've got something on are the bongos and the bass. I'm not sure if we'll be able to do much on the bass, mainly because I've only got this sample recorded, and the thing is, maybe the groups that we'll come up with on the kick and the percussion won't particularly fit that line of bass that I've got at the moment. But if we can, we'll apply it to it. But the main focus of this video is the groove, is the initial start, the initial drive that you can generate with a properly processed group of samples, of percussion samples. So let's get right into it. I'm gonna start using the kick. The first thing I'm gonna do, even before starting with the processing, because I'm not sure what I'm gonna do, is to create a clip. I'm gonna solo it, or actually instead of soloing it, I'm gonna grab everything. To do that, you can click from the first point that you want to select, and you press Shift, and you click all the channels that you want to select until from the point you want to select until the point you want to select. So it selects everything, and I want to move this outside of my clip because, again, I don't want this interfering at the moment with the creative process, although the kick is pretty straightforward, at least on this version. So I'm gonna go ahead. I've already got a sample here. Remember that to add samples into your drum rack, you just simply go to your sample library, search for the sample that you like, and you just drag it and drop it anywhere you want to, and it should be sounding. It's not at the moment because I didn't turn on the channel. There you go. So I'm gonna delete this one. I'm not gonna use that one at the moment. This is the one that I've selected. I pretty like this one. This is actually the kick that I'm using on my track. I did a bit of sound processing to it, but anyway, we'll play around with it. So I'm gonna create a clip. Let's select 8 bars, clicking and dragging, and then you can just right click and insert it, or you can actually, for me, what's easiest is to do Command or Control if you're using Windows, and Shift and M, and it'll create a clip for you. So to go into it, we just double click. You can arrange this one as well. I tend to use it quite large, particularly when I'm dealing with audio samples. In terms of what's better to use, drum rack or simpler, it depends. It really depends, because sometimes you want to layer samples, and to layer samples you can layer them with an instrument rack, and then have several. Oops, let me just do that again. You can have an instrument rack. Let's just create a Midi one, just for the sake of the. You can create this, and you can create and you can add several samples to the same instrument rack, and that way you can layer samples. If you know for sure that you're only going to use one sample and nothing else than one sample, you can just use the simpler. That's absolutely fine. You can use the simpler or the sampler. That's fine. Or the way that I like doing it, mainly because sometimes I like layering samples, and for me it's easier to see it this way. It's probably a long way around it, but it's easier this way for me, and I can just add several samples. But also, because I never know which channel I'm gonna work first. In my template, this channel is not called kick; it's just called drum rack. So as default in my template, I've got a drum rack, just to make it easier and to make it quicker for me whenever I need to start I want to start a new track. So that's probably why at this point in time I've got a drum rack only for the kick. But either way is absolutely fine. If you're not going to layer a sample, you can definitely go with simpler and nothing else. So let's move on to this. Let's go to the kick. I've created a clip. I'm going into it by double clicking, and just for the sake of this exercise, for the version 1, let's say, I'm gonna create a straight line kick, not much happening. Remember, you can double click on the line, double click whatever you want, and it'll create a sample, and then you can extend it or shorten it, whatever you want. So I'm gonna I thought I was making that mistake. Okay, so that's one beat, and I'm gonna duplicate it to make it 4. Select all of them, and then you can just select all of them again and duplicate them until you've got all the bits. Okay, at the moment we've got a straight line, but we haven't done much to the kick. So I want to process it for a little bit to make it sound. I'm gonna get to that question in 1 second. So something I'm gonna do is to select only these two, and I'm gonna select Ctrl and L so that I'm making a loop of that section of the arrangement. Your question, if simpler is better when you use preloaded templates. Again, when you use preloaded templates, it all depends on what's more comfortable for you. If you know you always use only one sample for the kick, then probably the simpler is better for you. If you don't really know what is it that's gonna happen, in my case, for example, I've got, whenever I open my template, what I've got is several lines of audio recording channels and 2 lines of drum racks, because sometimes I use different types of percussion in different drum racks, and sometimes I split the kick in a different channel, or sometimes I use it just like this when I'm not gonna mess around a lot with it. But again, when creating a template, ideally, and I wouldn't create a template from the start. What I would do is to make a few tracks, make 5, 6, 10, whatever the amount of tracks that you want to make, until you kind of figure out the way that your creative process works. Then create a template, and then figure out what are the elements that you usually use, and have them ready on that template. Okay, so let's go back to this. I've got my straight line of kick going into each beat, and I want to add some sound processing to this, because at the moment it's a nice kick, but it just sounds bland to me, or it doesn't sound exactly as I want it to sound, let's put it that way. And that's actually how it sounds. Yeah, so it's got a really high frequency. So the first thing I'm going to do is to lower the volume of this, because I know I'm going to push a little bit on the low end, and if I don't put the volume down, you can see that already the channel is pushing almost at the top. And something you never want to do is to go into the reds. You never want to go like that, because then you can actually hear that the quality goes really bad. So I'm going to use the channel on -6, because then you can push the volume with the sound processing, you can push the volume with compression, you can push the volume with mastering. So there's no really need to push the volume right now. If you feel like, yeah, I know it's clipping exactly. So if you push the volume too much from the start, what's gonna happen is that with all the sound processing, you're gonna have a lot of clipping, and then you're gonna have a lot of of cleaning to do. So it's easier if you start from the beginning with low volume. If you need more volume, you can increase the volume from your audio interface or from your computer. But it's always better if you start with a lower volume, and also it's easier for your ears. Okay, so let's add as default. I would say that you pretty much want everywhere a utility and an EQ8. And for this in particular version, I'm not going to do much more than that. I'm just going to filter the kick until the moment where I'm happy with it. So for that, you just turn on the filter. This is a high pass one, so I'm cutting the high frequencies. There you go. That sounds interesting, and it doesn't have that sharpness that I particularly don't like. If you want to even be more aggressive, you can go with the EQ, and you can cut the frequencies. I'm not that interested in doing that at the moment. So, and on this case, what I want to do is to slightly push, not this low end because it's already pretty high, it's got a good body, but I want to push here. You can feel it gives it a bit more of an actual kick, because the low end was given to the kick is more its body, but it's not really that sharpness, and I don't want this kind of sharpness. You can actually hear how the sound changes. That's the one I want. There we go. Okay. So I'm not going to do much more with this. We just touched it with the filter. We just did some EQing. We can maybe reduce a little bit more the highs. It's got like a tiny crackling sound on the highs, which I don't particularly like. Can you hear it over there? Cool. Okay, so that's pretty much it, and at least for this version of the kick. And now let's move on to the percussion. So again, I drag the area that I want to create a clip on, and Control and Shift, or Command and Shift if you're on Mac, and M, that creates a MIDI clip. And I've got already selected four samples that I recorded on one of my previous videos. I explained, or I didn't explain it, I talked about the importance of recording your own samples. And even though probably right now from the get-go the samples won't sound as impressive, you will see that with a bit of sound processing and creativity, you can actually they can actually go a long way. So at the moment, if I click on this, it doesn't really sound, it doesn't really do anything. For that, you need to click on the headphones, and then you can click on them and you'll hear the sound. Now something to have in mind here, something I noticed straight away is that all the samples have different volumes and they're out of balance, so we'll have to work on that as well. One of the samples is pretty long, which is this one. That's actually me just doing just like that, which when you hear like that is quite funny. But anyway, you can do cool things with that. So the thing I'm gonna do at the beginning to start with is to try and create something, an interesting line of percussion. Let's see if we can do something with this. So we got this sound. Let's start with a shorter one, and then we can make a variation of that. Actually, I want a shorter. I just want a 4-beat. I just want a 4-beat loop, and then we can extend it. So now I created a very long clip. If you want it shorter, you just have to select the part that you want to use, and again, Command and Shift or Control and Shift and the letter J. And it didn't do it. Sorry, only the command without the shift. So Command and J, and it'll just shorten that clip, and you'll be left out with that section that you selected. So going into that one, I only want this section. Okay, let's see if we can see. So something that is very annoying for me, I'm only doing in this video so that you can see, that you can hear what I'm trying to do. I never use this, because whenever you use that and you click on a note, whenever you click on a note, it'll sound. Whenever you move it, it'll sound. So it's very, very annoying for me. I never use it, but now, because I want you guys to hear, I'm using it. So let's put it here. So I'm just gonna create a short clip, short line. And now we can duplicate this and make a slight variation on the second one. And then we can add maybe another one here, and something you could do, because this is gonna sound quite high, quite loud, we can lower the intensity that you can handle using this. Lower the intensity so that is and then I selected everything, and then when Ctrl J again, okay, so this sounds like a bit silly. This sounds like at least it's a rhythm. Now something we can add, we can make an extra variation, and we can say, okay, in this section, obviously variations aren't gonna happen this quickly, but on this section we can add let's actually just use this version for the sake of it. Let's say we're working on the main loop. Okay, so this is at least has a bit of a drive, which is cool. I think particularly given by this sound, which sort of unifies the loop. So something I'm gonna do now is to start playing around with the elements themselves instead of the line. So at the moment, and as I was explaining in one of my previous videos, at the moment it all sounds pretty plasticky because I'm just putting the samples there, nothing's happening, they sound in the middle, there's no movement, there's nothing. It's just like all the sounds all together sounding right in the middle of your head, which is very, very annoying, and it doesn't really sound real. Whenever you hear something, it doesn't only come from one direction. It comes from the main direction that is coming, the message is coming, but also is bouncing off the walls, or if there's a band playing in front of you, the sounds come from different sections of the band, or if it's a drum, if it's drums in front of you, you're gonna probably hear the cymbals up here because they are up there, and you're gonna hear parts of the drums on your right and your left, and so on and so forth. So it's very important to play around with the space. So the first thing that I'm gonna try doing is to play with the space of the samples. For that, what I'm gonna do is to go to the session view, and I'm on this group. If you expand it, you'll be able to see the different channels and the sounds. Oh, there was a bit of panning already. That's why it didn't sound that bad. Okay, I forgot to remove that. Let me show you a better example then. So if I put everything on the middle again, there you go. That sounds pretty awful. So I'm gonna start moving this around. I want the long hi-hat, I want it on the right this time. And we need to sort out the volumes as well. And I want the other hi-hat on the left, so I'm gonna go minus 15. Okay, I need to sort out the volumes first because I'm gonna go crazy if I don't. So the first thing, let's do volumes. You can do both. For me, the best way of doing fine mixing is to put all the volumes down and then push them up slowly. But I don't want to do fine mixing at the moment because I know there's going to be some sound processing going on, and that's going to change the volumes as well. So at the moment, the only thing I'm going to do is just to lower the volumes a little bit to balance them out, and nothing else. Okay, so we've panned both hi-hats, one to each side. Something I also like to do is sometimes just to give it a bit of movement. I move the snare a little bit, not too much. So now it feels that the drums are separated in a way, and I'm gonna do something interesting with the rolling sort of hi-hat, but we'll get to that in a second. So now I've got a percussion set that is going all over the place. It's starting to sound nicer now. Let's do some EQing for all of them. Whoops, not there, but in there. And utility. The utility, probably we're not going to use it right now, but the main reason I want you guys to get used to adding it everywhere is because here's where you want to do the panning automations. Here's where you want to do the volume automations, because then from the main channel volumes you're gonna move the mix. The final mix is going to be from there, and you don't want that to be moving around all the time. You want to be able to have a mix where in the main everything sounds perfectly, and then you want to adjust all the movements with the automations from the utility. So get used to use the utility, because it's very, very, very useful. So I'm gonna add EQ8 and utility. Now, instead of dragging them over and over again, something that you can easily do is to select both of them by using the shift. And now that I've got both of them selected, I can just drag them by clicking the key, by pressing the key Alt. So that's going to duplicate them. I'm going to do the same for all 4 of them. I'm going to explain slowly this first version, and then we're going to move quickly, and I'm going to show you a few more tips. So now I've got a queuing. Something I don't want on the hi-hats are low frequencies. You can actually removing them doesn't change much the sound, but at the end of the day, if you cut and clean from the beginning, then you have a lot less cleaning to do at the end on the final mix. So I prefer cleaning all the instruments from the beginning. I don't need the low frequencies, and I know that in the end mix they're going to be messing up with my final mix and with the sound. So I prefer cutting them from the beginning, and then that's it. So let's do the same to this hi-hat. And the snare. You can actually see that it doesn't change a lot, the sound. However, again, in the final mix it will make much more sense. Okay, it sounds much more tidy, or tidier. And now we just have to identify where we want these sounds. So the short hi-hat sounds a bit too low, and it was actually transposed 2 steps below, and that's why it was too low. So I'm gonna have it there, and you'll hear a difference now. Let's find, there you go. You can fine tune it by using the transposing parameter. I like it over there. So now something I want to find, let's see if this works on this one. Okay, so I transposed it one step below, and I want to grab this knob here and push this space, and I want the Q to be slightly tighter so that I'm only pushing that section, and at the same time I want to give the other hi-hat a bit of space, so I'm going to cut the frequencies a little bit over there. So with this one the same, I'm going to put a bit of space to the other hi-hat, and I'm going to push where I want this one to sound more. This is not fine tuning at the moment, then you can get into the right frequencies and get it really clean, but I'm just balancing everything out so that it sounds tidier than it was. Now with the snare, we want to push the middles, the mid. There you go, that's what we want to push. And then on this rolling one, we probably want to push between both hi-hats. Okay, so now they all sound sort of nice, a lot better than they were sounding when we started. A lot better. And now we need to add something that all drums always have, or always have, which is a bit of reverb, a bit of space. Basically, you never hear a drum, because it's virtually impossible not to have any reverb at all. The way we hear all the time is our sound, our voice, or every sound bounces all over the place in any situation, in any room. Even if you're soundproofed as this room, or even whatever, there's always a little bit of reverb. So depending on the situation, depending on the mood of the track, depending on what you want to create, you're gonna give more or less reverb, more or less space. So what I'm gonna do now is to find each one of them their own space. So I'm gonna go to my plugins library, and I'm gonna use the same. I'm probably gonna use this one. And even though they're gonna have different parameters, I'm gonna use the same one for all of them. So as I mentioned before, you can drag it by using the Alt, by pressing the Alt key, and it will duplicate it at the end of the line. This one for some reason has two utilities. Apparently there are things that I forgot to delete from my track. Okay, so at the moment you'll see I'll play it as it is, and you'll see there's way too much reverb. So now it's just lost every shape. You could still probably do something interesting with this, but it's not the way that not the direction that I want to go right now. So this will all depend on the parameters that the reverb that you're using has. This time I want to go the long hat. Let's go one by one. I'm gonna solo it. That's the sound at the moment. I want a long reverb time, but I don't want much of the mix. See, that's very subtle. That's all I want. Let's add the short hi-hat, and let's go to the lexicon on this one, push it right back. Again, I want a pretty similar reverb. Let's make it a slightly bigger room, and now add the mix. Go. And now to your comment of using my own voices for the percussion. Now you can actually see what I mean when I talk about the importance of recording your own samples, because roughly at this stage you can't really realize that it's my voice. You can process the sounds, you can make them sound interesting, so there's no a real need of buying tons and tons of or going out of your way to download 1,000 samples. You can just make them. Right, I like that at the moment. Let's add the snare, which at the moment again sounds way too far away. Exactly, that's a good point. No one can tell you that you steal samples. That sounds pretty decent. Now, something I want to do to this one as well. First of all, it's sounding too distant. Then I'm gonna cut a bit more of the low frequencies. And something else I want to do, still too far away. There you go. And something else I want to do is to give it some movement, because now we're using almost the center for the snare and one side for each cymbal. So I want this one to have more movement, and for that reason what I'm going to do is to go to the audio effects library and get an auto pan right at the end, and I'm gonna give it a 45% amount. Now it's going too quickly, which I don't like, so you can go either by rate or you can go by time. That's too quick. And now that's moving, and that's interesting because you can feel that movement in your head, and you can feel it going from one side to the other one, which is interesting. But as there are many things sounding at the same time, for example here, you can't really tell exactly where it's moving and what time. It's just throwing you off balance, which I really like. Okay, so now let's add these bad boys that I also recorded. Ooh, where are you? Did I delete it? Or did I just move it? No, I moved it. Okay, there it is. Okay, let's just grab this one. I know it's longer. Okay, I can just make the loop longer, so we can extend it now. And we can grab all this and Command and D, and it'll duplicate the same thing over and over again. So let's go into the bongo now, which I also recorded at home, and the way I recorded it is using this thing that I did at home. So I just this is the leg of a table, so I emptied it and I filled it with crap basically. You can hear it's got things inside, and I taped this one, so now if I hit it, it doesn't sound like much, but again you can definitely feed into a track. So this is the sample that I recorded. Something I'm gonna do, I want to give it some EQing as usual. Utility, let's add the EQing as well. And something I want to play around with this particular instrument, I want to give it a real feel. I want to give it a real feel. I just read that comment of King of Congo Bongo. Something I want to play around with this is reverb. I want to automate the reverb so that we get that feeling of this person playing the bongos and going far away, and then coming back. So I'm gonna add the EQing and the utility, and I'm gonna go to my plugins library and add one of these. Let's stand it up for a second. I'm gonna cut the low frequencies because I don't need them, and I want to accentuate the mid ones. Needs less volume. And now we're gonna play around with this. Yeah, I'm gonna play with that. So the way I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do large space. I'm gonna give it loads of reverb time, and I'm gonna automate the level of mix. To do that, I'm gonna go to this arrow, and as there are many of them and I don't have the time to check which one it is, I'm just gonna move it so that it lets me know which one it is. There you go. So now that I click on this one, this red line over here is the one that I'm gonna automate. So something I'm gonna do is to create the feeling of the bongos going away and coming back. So I'm gonna select this part. I'm gonna go up. I'm gonna delete this dot, click out of it, click this one, come on, there you go, and I'm gonna select another point there. So this is what's gonna happen. And then it's going back to normal, and when the loop starts again, it's gonna go up again. We can actually make it finish a little bit more like that, so that when it starts, there's a change. Now this is slightly too loud. Right, and there we go. So that's pretty much the way you work your way up from the kick to create a line. We can try adding the bass line to this, but it's probably not going to make any sense. This is a bass guitar that I've got here that I recorded as well, that I recorded for my track. It sort of makes sense. So we can, it's for a start it's too loud, so let's put it right back down. Something we could do here is to add some compression so that it gives a space to the kick. I'm gonna start speeding up at this point, because I've gone through a few videos already explaining the basics, and on the first half hour I went really slow on every detail. So I want to start speeding up so that we can actually get to the version 2 and 3. I'm gonna add the usual, the EQ8 and the utility, and something that I absolutely love, which is where are you? Let's find it. Guitar rig. There you go. Drag and drop it, and here we are. We can directly go. I'm gonna solo the bass, and I'm gonna go to the bass library. I would usually select the components and pick the ones that I like, but at this stage there's really no point in doing that. You can play around with it. Let's say I'm happy with that, and I'm gonna go down because I don't want that much highs. Let's cut the very, very low frequencies that we don't want. Like distortion then. Let's add a compressor so that we can side change this little bad boy, which at the moment is eating up. So we add a compressor, we select the sidechain, audio from the kick, pre-effects. Yeah, I agree, it definitely gives that kind of grungy sound. And let's not forget that back then it all started with transistors, and it all started, like, if you go back and listen to the first idea of electronic music, of how today electronic music sound, which is a beat and then the sounds on top. The first instruments were pretty much a bass drum played live. I'm gonna try to dig up that YouTube video, and I'm gonna put it up. One of the first concerts, if you will, of techno music were a couple of guys just playing with a kick drum and another guy making sounds with strings and transistors. So techno actually comes from well, I'm not sure if it actually comes from rock, but it certainly has some roots in it, and the people who started creating it definitely played around with this grungy sound and this distortiony sound. So yeah, very, very, very interesting to in a way go back to those sounds. So I want to compress it. Just so that it gives space to the kick. You can actually go like that, but that's too hard. That's too little maybe. I'm gonna say over there. I'm gonna say attack very quick. Okay, so that's version 1. That's version 1 finished. Again, it'd be really, really, really interesting if you could download the samples that you can find on the description. You can find them the description. Let's see if I can show you the folder again. This is the folder. You'll be able to see those are all the samples. Make your own version. If you want to make a track with them, make a track and send it through, and I'm more than happy to have a look at it, to have a listen, even make a video reviewing it. That's all cool. It'd be super cool if you can do something with it. If you don't want to make an entire track, make a loop, make a 16-32 bars loop, like 30 seconds loop, and send it through. Add your own elements, make whatever you feel like doing with them. It'd be really, really cool and interesting to see what you can do with this same set of samples. I'm gonna take just 1 second to remind you that if you do like this video, if you find anything useful, please give it a share, give it a like. This is my channel. You can find lots of what I think interesting stuff. You can find original tracks. The making a techno track series, that what I'm going through a specific track that I made, and I'm showing you how was my thought process behind the track. I've got several techno mixes here. I've got some more techno mixes here that I dedicated to more to meditation, and some music inspiration, some awesome artists that I love, that I and tracks that I find inspiring. So I'm putting everything there. There's loads of content over there, so please give it a share, a like, subscribe, whatever. And again, these are some of my social links: Twitter, SoundCloud. Anyway, pay a visit, give it a share the love as usual. So let's go to the version number 2. So far the version 1, that's what it was. That's all good. Let's find another one. I'm gonna probably do a simpler version. Let's go with a kick, because I want to focus a little bit more on the sound processing this time than on the actual line. So let's just turn this one off and this one on, and I'm gonna create the clip. Remember, to create the clip, you drag the area, Command and Shift and the letter M. Yes, I do have Instagram. My Instagram is I'm gonna write it down over here. Instagram is that's the one. I don't know why I wrote the 0. It's not this. It's not a 0. It's just the Mariano say. Anyway, type in this. Continue with this kick. Is again the same kick. Let me check that it doesn't have any sound processing, because this one I'm gonna tweak it quite a bit. There you go. So something I want to do with this kick is to EQ it a little bit, not too much. I'm gonna add a utility as well, but instead of cutting the high frequencies this time, I'm gonna cut the low frequencies. So I'm only letting the high frequencies and mid frequencies go through, and I'm gonna add the low frequencies with an instrument, with an audio effect called Corpus. Which now obviously sounds very annoying, but we can this is somewhere over there. So you just have to play around with it. I'm finding. Oh, there we go. So if we let a little bit more of this to go through, there we go. Now let's add another EQ8 at the end. Another bit of bass over there. A little bit here. That sounds more interesting. That sounds a little bit more interesting. So something you definitely have to do with this is to play around a lot. And you can play until you find something that you like. I know it's probably this one in this particular, I mean, it sounds interesting. It's probably not the best one that I've ever made, but you've got so many parameters that you have to really spend some real time into it to be able to get a really cool sound. But it's definitely worth it. You've got several of them. And depending on the style you like, you can do it shorter, longer. Let's go with this one for a second. Let's go down with the... It's going into the reds. So I'm going down with the volume. And this actually sounds like we can do something really aggressive and... We can maybe add something. Whoops, not there. This sounds like we could go quicker probably with this. I'm just making stuff up as I go along at the moment. This is definitely not the definitive version. But it's cool to see how different techniques take you in different directions, and that's all what this session is. That's what this session is all about. Yeah, it definitely sounds like more tool room techno, yeah. Let's just go with that at the moment. Because now I can imagine this one actually. Instead of using the whole thing, let's just use this one, an EQ8, a utility, always, and I'm gonna shorten the sample, and I'm gonna go I'm gonna add a Midi clip, and I'm gonna have only that one sounding. Whoops, wrong one. Ctrl J. So it's over there. So let's duplicate this one. It's easier. Then we can make it on something I'm gonna do with this one is first of all add a little bit of reverb. I'm gonna use the Ableton one. No, I don't like it. I really don't like it. I was gonna use it because it's easier, but I don't like it. So let's go with it. And now what I'm gonna use is another really cool instrument, which is the resonator. Cool. And now we can now you can start seeing why I keep saying over and over and over and over again why I keep saying that you can make so much with the same set of samples. You can make so much by recording your own samples. Because now we can start playing with the resonators. We can start playing with them, and you can start creating music and you can start automating all this. So at the beginning, and then you can move them and then you can play around with them so that you can make different melodies. That's actually really interesting. I'm probably going to end up using that. So at the moment, just because we can go even further, and let's say, okay, I want to duplicate that, and now let's forget about this for a second, and now I want to start adding I want to start adding the hi-hats. And let's do it here. So then it starts the long one, and now we can actually drag and select all of it and duplicate it. And if you do it like that with the Command and J, I can drag it, and now I can duplicate it all along that line. And I'm gonna add to this one, so me queuing, as we've been doing so far. And let's add some reverb. Not that much, only that far. And probably want to play a little bit with this one as well, just automate it. Let's do small automations, just to keep it moving. And if you want to go deeper into, and this is pretty much how I create music. Once you start feeling the groove with something, and you start having ideas and developing them, then you say, oh, so the next thing can be this. So let's say now what we do is exactly what you were saying. We go here and we say, okay, these four, I'm just gonna let these bad boys to sound. I'm just gonna let them do the melody. I'm gonna go and now that this one comes along, let's add the low end of the kick. Let's turn off the filter and see what happens. Boom. Let's do a little break. Obviously you probably want more things happening at this point, but this is kind of like the first idea. It's clipping, but you get the idea. That sounded pretty cool. That is indeed a pretty cool kick. Yeah. I'm enjoying that cake. I'm enjoying this idea really. I'm really enjoying this idea, and that's again one of the things that I say. Look at how different it is from what we just came from. Let's just turn this off for a second and let me play for you what we just did half an hour ago. This is nowhere near. This is nowhere near what we've just done in the last 15 minutes, and I'm using the same 5 samples, same 6 samples. So and I keep repeating this because just to me it's mind blowing that you can actually get so many possibilities, and it's just I just find it absolutely mind blowing and super interesting. I mean, I enjoy it so much that you can suddenly go from something like this, which is cool, it's fun, to something so intense by just tweaking and processing stuff and knowing where to go and knowing when to dig in. And to be honest, experimenting, there's a lot of experimenting as well. I'm actually loving this break here. Just gonna play one more time because I'm intoxicated. I must admit it. That break is pretty cool, and there's nothing happening. Okay, cool. I don't think there's really point in adding these ones. What can we do? Okay, yeah. Let's just be adventurous, but let's do something different, which I haven't taught you how to do so yet. I'm gonna add a MIDI track. I'm gonna go Command Shift and M, so that should add a MIDI track. Command Shift or Control Shift and T, and that will add a MIDI track. And in that MIDI track, I'm gonna have a drum rack. And in that drum rack, what I'm gonna do is to get a few of these ones into the drum rack. Reminds you of Richie Hawtin. I wish one day. So let's grab these 3 and drop them into the drum rack. Add them into the drum rack. Cool. So now we've got, let's forget about this one. Drum rack. Let's call it Bongo 2, so that will replace the other one. I want this one to start from this point. Okay, so let's make 3 different ones from pretty much the same plasticky shitty thing. Let's make 3 different cool samples. So first thing I'm gonna do is to, as usual, and I want you guys to get used to doing this all the time, utility and EQ everywhere. You want your samples clean. You want your samples all the time tweaked and EQ'd. So at the moment they sound the same, So let's do first thing I'm going to do is to transpose them so that they sound different. I'm going to get rid of the high end of it and boost a little bit this part, cutting the lows. Let's go just one with this one. On this one, let's actually go high. That sounds interesting. And let's see what we can do. And then we can play around. Now that if we nail the rhythm, do something like that. Maybe, we'll see. But then we can start changing them around. This sounds very simple. Let's use those two. Sounds very simple, right? It sounds again like I'm going back to to that like Latin direction. But if we now start playing around with the panning and a few other effects, let's say I'm gonna go left with one, right with the other one. I'm gonna start using some delays. Now it sounds completely different. And let's add a little bit of reverb to the whole mix because I want the same for these two. Now something interesting that we can actually add to the entire to this entire thing, first thing I'm going to do is to split them a little bit more. Let's say I want this to start growing slowly. So I'm gonna use a utility in the main channel, and I'm gonna automate the volume so that it slowly grows. And something that I'm gonna add again to the main one is from the audio effects library. I'm gonna use the overdrive. So I think that's that gives you an idea, for example, of what you can do, what different direction you can go with the same set of samples that we created the previous version. So very simple. Just a hi-hat, which is not a hi-hat, is my voice, and the kick. The kick has the corpus in it. What you can hear making that sort of harmonic effect is this, the resonators on the cropped sample. Now I added the long hi-hat, which again is just me doing just like that, and everything starts turning into a heavier track, more intense. And we apply the bongos. Can you add main double click? Before main kick part. Not entirely sure what you mean by that. Do you mean here? Do you mean here? Maybe? Maybe like that. Or you mean this? That. Yeah, we can definitely do that, and we can make the filter. We can make the filter go off there and play with the intensity of these two, so that they aren't as loud as the main, but still strong. and now the bongos start climbing up as well. You can go anywhere with these bongos actually, because they're just triggers. You have to think of the samples. You have to think of the samples as triggers of effects, and not just sounds. It's just trigger that you can add layers to them. You can add anything. Right. Mainly because I've extended this version so much. Almost we've gone almost 3 minutes of this version. I think this is a very very good point. A very good point to stop the streaming. I think we've covered a lot, and actually on the second version, now that I'm looking at my notes, most of what I wanted to cover in the second version I covered on the first one and the second one as well. So I think that would be it for today. Something I wanna tell you again, guys. I'm sharing all these samples with you. You've witnessed how we've managed to create different and really interesting things from the same set of samples, and just for the sake of it, I'm going to show you what I've done with this set of samples. What I've done with it is this groove. Let's just turn all the others off. This is what I've done with it. Where's here? That's what I've done with it, which is again completely different to the other, or pretty different to the other two versions, completely different to the last one. It's more similar to the other one, but mainly because of the bass line, which makes it really similar. But it's got different panning, different effects, and you can go from that to that, and you wouldn't think that's the same person who made those things. You wouldn't think you definitely wouldn't think that's the same set of samples doing that. That for me is one of the beauties of music, that you can get to so many different avenues and so different end goals with the same samples and techniques. It's just using different techniques, using sound processing, and that's why it's so important. And that's one of the reasons that I want to do these streamings at least once a month, because I think I can give you a few tips, and even if there's plenty of what I say that you might find that the way I do certain things is slightly different to the way you do things, and we can find interesting things that each other do, and we can share this knowledge between us. So it'd be really cool and interesting if you could again go to the link on the description and get the samples, get working on them. See if you can make an entire track. If you can make an entire track, make it. If you can make just a tiny loop, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, 45 seconds, just go ahead and do it. Send it through. I'll have a look at it. I'll have a listen, and we can maybe make another live streaming, listening to the things that you've sent, and we can exchange tips and so on and so forth. Again, these are all my social links. Give it a share, give it a like, subscribe, all the old stuff that you already know. Thank you. Let me just check if you are how can I share mine. Thank you for your samples. How can I share my loops or field samples with you after? So basically, if I'm not wrong, on the link in the description you can find my email. If it's not there, you can simply hit me up on on YouTube, you can hit me up on Twitter, or you can send me an email to this address right here. That's my email address. So hit me in any of the social networks. You can actually, another thing you could do, which I think is the easiest one, is send me an email on an email or a message on SoundCloud as well. Any way you want to, there's tons of way of sharing and getting in touch. If you've got questions in the meantime, send them my way. I'm more than happy to help with any questions you guys have. So again, thank you so much for spending the last 1.5 hours with me. It was so much fun, especially once we started getting to this version 2. I mean, I definitely got into it and really enjoyed it. So thank you so much for joining me on this one. My name is Mariano Cicciarelli, and see you next time. And now I've got to turn off the streaming. See you.